matters to us. You mentioned the Washington Post story before. They're not here right now.
Yeah, they're not.
That story did not just
I noticed
have
that too.
anonymous sources. It had both in it. And
I'm not sure that that's true. I mean, I'm happy to.
People have been tweeting it.
But okay, beyond the Washington Post story, I just want to point out that.
Well, hold on a second. I'm not suggesting that there aren't people who are quoted. I'll give you a chance. I'm not saying there aren't people quoted on the record in the story. There are people quoted on the record in the story. Cecilia Munoz from the White House is quoted in the story. But the lead of that story is hooked entirely to anonymous sources. That's a fact.
Okay. Well, I'll let the Post deal with whatever interaction.
If they choose to show up, maybe
okay.
they can defend themselves.
Say, forget that story, and I'll just say more broadly something that you know that we always say, which is you criticize anonymous sources, but we have anonymous sources from you all every day. I think we have a call today. I mean, it's how can you criticize that when that's what you basically give us every day, except for the briefing?
Except for the briefing, except for the fact I've been standing here for an hour answering all of your questions, which is an important practice, right? And this is a symbol that we're committed to. The president's traveling tomorrow. I'm going to do a briefing tomorrow, right? We're committed to this process, and that's why we do this briefing on the record.
You're also committed to anonymous sources. I'm just saying.
Well, we've had this discussion a couple of times in this forum, and we can have that conversation.
Okay.
I did point it out. Here's what I will point out, and this is what I think is important. I'm not suggesting that they shouldn't run their story. It's not my place to suggest that the people who represent that empty seat right there can make their own decisions about what stories to run. They're entirely entitled to doing that. What I think is important is that greater weight should be granted to those who are willing to put a face and a name with specific claims. Cecilia Munoz, who's the president's top immigration advisor, is in that story, conveying exactly the White House position. And I spent the last hour in here talking to all of you because I'm putting my face and my name with this administration's positions. And in the course of reporting, I think it's important, based on my own personal view, for those kinds of quotes and those kinds of stories to be given greater weight than just anonymous sources. So what that means is if you have anonymous sources at the White House who are telling you something, and you're going to say to them, that anonymous source, look, I'm going to give your side of the story a little less weight right now because you're telling me this anonymously. That would be an entirely credible thing for you to do. To suggest that somebody who's willing to put their name and their face and their title and their position along with the story that they want to tell, that deserves some added weight as people are reporting out individual stories. And I think this is the case that I hear from journalists as they're evaluating whether or not to report based on anonymous sources here at the White House. I think that is a credible claim. The problem and the frustration that I might be showing just a little bit of right now is that there are times when there are anonymous outside voices, as is the case with the Washington Post story, that are given greater weight than on-the-record sources from the White House when it pertains to information about what's happening at the White House. And that is the source of frustration that is occasionally expressed, even occasionally expressed from this podium.
So Josh, would you guys commit then when we have situations like today's call, which is people specifically picked by the White House to roll out a policy of the White House, would you commit to have those people speak on the record? Since there doesn't seem to be a reason to put them on background and have them be anonymous?
What I will commit to is a case-by-case evaluation of the background or the ground rules of each of these kinds of calls, and a commitment to an open dialogue with you about the ground rules that will serve your interests and the White House interests the best.
And consistency in the weighting that you just described.
Well, I think the weighting decisions that I've described are actually decisions that are made by reporters, as they should be.
You can make them as well.
I'm not. What do you mean?
You can make a weighting decision consistent with the benefit of having people with names, titles, and positions on background calls to articulate White House policy.
Well, no, I think what I'm saying is that if you participate in a background call that's hosted by the White House, and you say, well, we're going to give that a little less weight because it's anonymous sources, I think that is a much easier position for you to defend than it is for other stories when you're reporting on information at the White House, where greater weight. Well, that is the position that Anita was defending because the Washington Post wasn't here to defend themselves. They didn't show up today, so.
Separate issue. White House calls.
No. I'm not blaming you. I'm not blaming you.
Separate issue. White House calls on White House policy should be on the record.
Well, again, we'll evaluate that on a
Based on the weighting that you just described, and I do urge
the weighting that I was
consistency.
describing was a journalistic decision that is, as it should be, made by independent journalists. So with that, I hope you all have a wonderful afternoon and enjoy the afternoon call today.
Thank you, Judge.
Thank you.
Well, we know how to start it, that's for sure.
Absolutely.
Oh, they just sent it a new dialing. The White House just sent out a thing about a new dialing, and I thought, oh my gosh, that changed already.
Wow.
Wow.
That would be
No.
results. Thanks, guys.